Alright, so for this video, what we're going to do is we're going to make a wooden picture frame. And we're going to go through the following steps. So we start off by marking off our dimensions on our redwood, and we're going to use the miter saw to cross-cut those dimensions into our rough cut. Planer, and we're going to basically plane it down so that we have a nice looking surface. We're not looking for a particular thickness. We're just trying to get rid of the rough edges. Our next step is to take it to the table saw, and we're going to rip cut this to the width that we are looking to for the width of our frame. So I'm making 2 picture frames here, which is why I have 8 pieces, but you'll just have 4 pieces that you are going to cut. I'm using a different type of holding mechanism here, so depending on your comfort level, you can try both of these. You can see as I get to the edge, I need to bring that down so I still have contact with the table as I'm doing it. Next up, we use our crosscut sled. So our crosscut sled is going to allow us to take that rough initial length and bring it down so they're all identical. So we're going to put a stop block in. I measured it out at 10 inches. Clamp it in place, and then we are going to bring it back and turn on the saw, hold it down, and then basically run it across, and that will guarantee that we have the same length wood for all sides. Our next step is to use our 45-degree sled. So we use our 45-degree sled, and that will cut a 45-degree angle. Now, you may want to flip this over to both sides. I have a stop block set up there so I guarantee the same length. And then I am flipping that each time so I get 2 45 degrees, but on the same side. This should give you a nice, clean 45-degree angle for the corners of your frame. All right, next we're going to put a rabbet in the back. So we're going to use the flush trim router bit. We have a 0-degree clearance fence on this so that it doesn't get sucked back, and basically you just want to make sure that you are holding the workpiece down and pushing across with the push sticks. Next, we're going to put that round over on the outside edge. So again, using the router table, we're going to have our round over bit set, and we're again using our push sticks, we're going to bring it across this router bit to put a nice edge on the outer edge of the frame. Now it's time to assemble the frame. So we're going to use glue, and then we're going to use some painter's tape to help hold those corners in place. So some glue, you want to be relatively liberal with the glue, and then the painter's tape will help you basically fold it back into a square. Now as you bring it, or into a rectangle, as you bring it back into square, you want to check those with a combination square or a square to make sure that you've really got your 90 degrees. You want to make sure everything is flush, and at the end you're going to put some additional tape in there to make sure that everything stays lined up as it should be. After everything's taped up, you're going to let the glue dry. And once everything is dry, you're going to take it to our jig to put these splines in the corners. So you're going to line it up, put a stop block in so that you're consistent with where that is. You want to make sure that you bring it all the way through so that it's a deep cut. This is going to allow us to put an additional piece of wood to support these miter joints so that they're not just relying on the glue. Next up, we use the thin rip jig. So this is going to go in that slot, and we're going to set it to be basically the depth of a blade. This is going to allow us to rip a thin sheet of wood so that we can put it in those splines and again reinforce that corner. So I'm setting it to basically be a blade width. I'm going to start there. I might have to adjust a little bit. The key is that you put the thin rip jig in front of the blade so it's not pinching the blade. And then you're going to run your wood through, move the fence over so it's just touching that bearing, and then it will slide through and get you a piece that length. So as you push it through, you produce a small thin piece. I'm just checking to see if that fits, making a small adjustment, doing it again. And then once I get a strip of wood that's the right width, that's a nice tight fit in that spline joint, I'm going to cut them to length using the cross-cut sled again. So back to the crosscut sled. It doesn't really matter what length these are. We just want to make sure that we have smaller pieces. So taking that thin rip piece and cutting it into smaller pieces that we can insert in each corner. So now we're going to put some glue, and then we're going to put those into the corner pieces, into those grooves that we just cut. We're going to glue it up and let it dry. And then our last step will be to use a handsaw to cut off the final pieces to try as flush as we can, and then we'll take it to the belt sander to make everything nice and flush with our existing frame. You can see I didn't have enough glue to begin with. It's a little bit of wet wood, and so I put additional glue, and I'm going to hold it with those splines. Again, checking everything square, and then we're going to let it dry. Last step is to take it and cut off with the handsaw, put in the vise, make sure that we're cutting down, and then we're going to get as flush as we can, and then our final step will be to take it to the belt sander to clean up that final edge.